Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 2021 and our next series of Power Hour. My name is Sean Ryan. I'm going to be one of the co-hosts. I'm joined with Chi Carnegie here. Today we are going to be covering the Orion Alarm, Archive, and Retentive add-on or protocol within the Orion platform. And then we're going to jump a little deeper and then also do a preview of the Tile Annunciator. Just as a little bit of a heads up, as we said, this is 2021. This is going to be the next series of Power Hour. As you may have seen in some of the emails going out, this is going to be a bi-weekly presentation now, every other Wednesday. And we're going to be doing some basic style topics as we are today. And then we're also going to be transitioning into deeper dives, which we've coined as expert mode, where we're going to expect some of our customers to have a knowledge base already as we go in, as we show some of the further details and intricacies of each of those presentations. So as we said, my name is Sean Ryan. I'm on the left, obviously joined by Chi Carnegie over on the right. Our contact information is below. And part of our agenda today, or I should say before I jump into that, so as we mentioned at the end of last year, we are giving away Power Hour t-shirts. So the 5 most attentive or engaged attendees that have their screen on the top and aren't doing other stuff in the background are eligible to win these fine items. So hope you guys end up as winners. So part of the agenda today, my half here is, as you guys can read, but basically what I'm going to be showing is kind of an overview of what you guys can expect throughout the AAR process. We're going to go on to the Orion itself and show some of the screens. And then we're going to begin some of the basic programming of it within NCD3. So I'll show some of the general configurations of it. And then I'm going to jump in and show some of the binary and analog alarm programming and some of the attributes associated with that, and a few of the permissions that are programmed within the Orion web page interface itself. She's going to take over from there, and she's going to show the latter part of the AAR, the alarm, the archiving and retentive portions there, and then she's going to jump in and show the Tile Annunciator, some of the settings, and then a deeper dive into some of the user interface on the web pages themselves. So with that, I'm going to jump into one of the Orions here, and as I said, I'm just going to show a basic overview of what you can expect with the AAR. So here I have logged into my own personal little Orion LXM, and this is, you can pretend pretty much this is what it will look like out of the cardboard, out of the box, with some basic settings on it. One of the key indicators I use, sometimes if I have an alarm light on the front of my box too, and I'm looking for the database, I know that I don't have the database enabled right now because I'm only seeing home, data values, devices, system. I am missing the alarms and archive tabs themselves within the Orion interface. So again, from an initial out-of-the-box configuration and whatnot, to get that enabled, we're going to go to Settings. And then we're going to go to Users first because the database requires what's called the Postgres permission by default. So since I'm logged in as my NovaTech user, I'm going to select NovaTech. And again, with default properties on the Orion, we need to select Postgres here and then click Save Settings. And that's going to give the NovaTech user or any other users you choose access for the database control. So with that, I'm going to jump into Settings, and I'm going to come down to Database. You may have to go into the second step of logging in and unlock it here. And by doing that, now we need to click Enable Database. So I'm going to go click that. The Orion's going to go through the process of initializing the database, doing some structuring in the background, and getting this table ready for use here. And typically, we always like to recommend doing a reset of the database. Even though we just built it, we click a reset anyhow. And you're going to go ahead and click all 4 of these just for fun and click Reset Database. I am actually going to not, because I have some entries in there already that I want to use for example. So I'm going to actually click Cancel here, but you guys should click Reset Database. So with that, you guys might have noticed a few seconds ago that when I did enable that database, I now have tabs available for alarms and archive. And if I did have a configuration loaded in here that had AAR configured already, hopefully that would have taken care of any of alarm lights that you may have had. So with the alarms page available now, this is just doing a quick presentation of what we can expect and what you guys will see as we go through the configurations. Now, the way that I like to think of the alarm panel here is this is kind of your old traditional light bulb style Annunciator panel where it's giving you just the current state of things. This is not your sequence of events or changes, but this is just the current state of all of these points. Now, it is giving me a timestamp, of course, but if I had a point toggling back and forth or chattering, for example, you would only see the latest state here. So as we go through here, again, timestamps, you're going to see messages that we're going to configure within NCD. You're going to have the point name itself along with any aliases that are programmed in there. And then the next thing that I want to point out is that if you go to column settings, we can also enable the zone and codes if you need to. So we're going to go ahead and put those in there. And these are going to come into effect as well within our programming. We had one quick question that came in that says, why does it not come enabled by default? Why is the database not enabled? The answer is because not everybody is using the AAR function, and so it just kind of keeps the background processes a little cleaner and doesn't take up that extra, horsepower and memory of the Orion for a function that it's not actually utilizing. So what we're going to do is we're going to show the alarm archive. So if we click into that, this now is more of the sequence of events style of what the alarms page was. It's showing each time something changed and it going back and forth. So you'll see, for example, these feeders were opening and closing a few times when I was playing with them. And that's how you can go back and use this as a little bit more of a historian. Now the archive, if I click into this, and again, we're going to come back and cover all this in a little bit deeper dive later when she jumps in, but the archive can be treated almost as a complement to the alarms tab. Some points that you'll see as we go through NCD can be set for alarm only, and other points can be set for archive only, or both, but the archive can be used again as another type of historian where maybe you want to log things such as currents on a feeder, or you want to monitor frequencies or voltages or something, and you can use this for doing some trending, which you'll see view trending here, and she's going to jump into that a little bit later as well. So that is kind of the preview of how you're going to initialize things within the web page of the Orion, enable that database, and now we are going to jump gears a little bit and go into the programming of the AAR.
Sorry, we have a question that comes in for the alarm tab. If a point is toggling, it won't actually show the update until we refresh, right? That's one of the questions.
I believe so. I think it does take a refresh. One thing you'll notice is there is going to be an alarm banner that pops up. I think she's going to jump into the details of this, and this will show some of the latest counts as well. And so that will be one of your indicators that you can do a page refresh on here. I will double check that, but I think that's the case.
And another question was asking, how come the NovaTech user doesn't have the Postgres permission enabled by default?
That is a good question.
And I think it's tied to your point too. AAR is not always purchased by a user, so unless AAR is purchased, Postgres is not being used, therefore it's just not permission that's needed, I believe.
Yeah. One thing I'll point out that it might be tied to is the permission for the database is programmable. If we jump into, I believe it's settings and then web UI, the database here, the access is restricted to a certain group. So that group can be modified. And so I think since Postgres isn't necessarily a hard-coded permission, that may be part of it. but otherwise I'd have to ask some of the software guys. So any other questions or?
Another question says, what do you do if Postgres doesn't enable properly?
Can they expand on that one a little bit? Is just the permissions not applying or?
Yeah, we'll wait for a clarification, but I imagine, let's go to settings and go to the database. I think when you do that enable, sometimes either that link's not allowed to. There is an option to enable and reset database via command line using root users, but yeah, I guess like if these links aren't working properly for the user, I think command line is the best option, unless you know anything another way, Sean.
Yeah, there is, as you said, the advanced way of clearing it, but for an out-of-the-box scenario, it should hopefully just work to enable and then do the reset.
Yeah.
He said scenario where the Postgres was corrupted and wouldn't enable when commanded. If that ever happens, as Chi just said, I think that would require one of the command line resets. So we'll put that out in the follow-up email there. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to jump into the programming.
Perfect.
So within NCD3, to begin the process of configuring AAR and the tile Annunciator and whatnot, I have a demo file already set up. It has a simple serial port here with nothing more than 4 feeders programmed in, and we've got some typical binary inputs and analog inputs as well. So we're going to use that as a reference. The devices' names are simply feeder 1, 2, 3, and 4, just to show you guys what's going on in the background here. But when we start, we're going to go to configure, my file here. We're going to go to add-ons, and then we're going to go to alarm, archive, and retentive. So when we start here, we've got a few permissions to begin with. We have the archive enabled. That one's a little self-explanatory. That just enables the archiving function or that archive tab for some of the points to be assigned to that. One thing I do want to point out, a quick little tangent, is that as we go through here for reference, everybody can go to help documentation. This will open up the folder within the installation directory of NCD3, and you can scroll down to software, alarm, archive, retentive, and this is going to do basically a walkthrough of everything that we're showing today in print form and all of the different parameter values and whatnot. For instance, the reason that triggered my memory is because I'm actually looking in some of the printouts for here. I wanted to show you guys that the archive maximum records is essentially the number of entries that you have in there. You can have anywhere from 200,000, which is the default value within here, all the way up to 10 million records within each one of the Orions, with the exception that the I/O can be 1 million. The archive queue size, not too sure why anybody would want to change that. That can go from 100 to 100,000, but that's the number of records that will transfer into the archive each time as part of the process there. The retentive option, we select retentive enabled. That is essentially a memory type function. The Orion will remember the last known state of points after a reset of the Orion itself. So if a device had sent a value over to the Orion is going to keep that as kind of the last known state until connections are reestablished to that IED and new values are pulled. This is also very handy for logic type applications where, again, something that you create in logic and store as one of the the virtual points, if you will, that point can then be saved in memory, which is useful for things such as like counters or whatever else you might need to restore after a device reboot. The retentive interval there, that can go from 0 to 9,999 seconds. 120 is obviously the default, but the rule of thumb on that one is that you want to do about no less than 0.1 seconds per the number of points that you plan to put into the archive. And then the retentive queue size, kind of the same idea as the archive queue size, how many points it's going to send into that archive each time. Coming down to the bottom, we have the alarm archive enabled. And so that is going to be from the alarms tab here, getting into that secondary section here. So that's going to be that correlation. And then retentive alarm enabled, same idea, just keeping a memory of the alarm states upon a reboot. And then a very important checkbox that comes up, this comes down to the philosophies of each of the end users, is if you want the Orion to automatically acknowledge return to normal alarms. Generally, I don't like this because you may miss something that is going into alarm and then possibly clearing itself, or you have something floating right along the edge of being an alarm or not. So I personally don't like this one, but some people do. So keep that one in mind. That one little checkbox has a bit of a powerful effect. And then lastly, on the display device time, that is going to show the timestamps from the end devices themselves rather than the host Orion here. So with these things configured here, I'm happy. I'm going to go ahead and click accept, and we're going to move into the configuration portion of the AAR. So I'm going to click inputs, and in all typical fashion, all of the points that are available within the Orion are on the left. You'll see all of those feeders already, and the points that I want to include in the AAR, I need to send over to the right. So in lazy fashion, I'm just going to, I'm going to start with selecting feeder 1, and I'm going to scroll all the way down and find the end of my feeder 4, holding shift, click. I'm going to send all of these points over. And so now you'll see a few little things. We have the mins, the max, initial values, and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and sort by this max column because you'll see it goes just from 0 to 1 now. And as I start clicking alarm enable here, you'll notice it's starting to add some extra parameters along with it. For alarm enable binary alarm, because these are binary points, which is okay. And then it's also doing a retentive enable as well. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select, as we go through here, oops, it didn't sort correctly for me. Anyhow, I'm going to find all of my binary points like so. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to do a edit common attributes for that. And what I want is I want to make sure that my alarm is enabled. I've selected all binary points, yes. And I don't want them to be in the archive. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I don't want them to be retentive either. So I'm just going to go ahead and click apply, and it's going to enable those selected parameters for me. So now I've got those. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sort again, and I'm going to find all of my analog points now, which I can identify since they've got this scaling here. And I'm going to select all those. And we're going to do the same similar idea. I'm going to alarm enable those and click apply. And then the reason I didn't do archive enable on all of those is because that's a lot of data, and to some degree, I'm going to get some repetition here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to pick a few basic things, such as like the important ones that I would want to monitor for like each of my feeders, for example. So I'm looking here. For example, I'm going to want to find my instantaneous currents. So I'm going to find those for each of my feeders. So here's my instantaneous currents for all those. I'm going to select those. And again, I'm actually going to allow archive of just those points and click apply. So now I have those available to go into my archive, and Chi's going to play with those in the second half. And the last thing that I'm going to do is you'll see I've been scrolling around, making it a little complicated to find things. You can use the search box tools in here to kind of narrow down and find the points that you want. So for example, I've filtered by just feeder 1. It's using partial text in here. And so now I'm going to go ahead and find that frequency of feeder 1. because assuming it's all on the same bus, that should be the same between all feeders 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm also going to go ahead and do the voltages as well, phase A, B, and C voltages of feeder 1, and that'll be enough for our demo here today. So with that, I'm content. I've got some points in there. That's how we get everything started. Now with the points that have been selected for binary alarm and the analog alarms, I can now jump into the next section here of binary alarms by the filter, and there are some of those points. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the different codes and zones and all that fun stuff that we tried to show on the web pages. So I'm going to leave initial value alone because Chi's going to jump into that. But what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the zone. Now the zone doesn't have any direct functional effect on the programming or the functions. It's more of just kind of a filtering type tool, if you will. And so you'll notice that I have feeder 1 selected already, still in my search. So I'm going to select all of these, and I'm just going to change my zone to 1. And I'm going to click apply. I'm going to change that over to a 2. And we're going to do a little rinse and repeat here. We're going to change that to zone 2. And do a little rinse and repeat. We're going to find feeder 3. And I'm sure you guys can guess what's happening next. We're going to find feeder 4, and we're going to set the zone to 4. Again, just an example. I'm going to clear this search so that everything shows up. And you guys are going to wonder, why did we do that? Now, the zone is just a assignable number here. Again, it's just more of a search tool. The reason that we did that is because, again, if we come back to alarms, things are going to be referenced by the zone code. So you can filter by that. Now, zone, you might be able to use it by some kind of a logical or some kind of a physical type distinction. You might be able to say this part of the substation yard, maybe it's in this metal clad cabinet 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe you do want to assign it by breaker numbers, etc. That is simply going to group all of those alarm points into that zone. So you can show that and use it in any way that you want to apply it. Now, we're going to do one more other little tangent here with part of the zones, is that if you go into logic and you're using advanced math and logic, there are a few little commands in here. Let's expand that out. Let's get the Orion. You can do the Orion acknowledge all alarms command. So we can drag that over. Obviously, it's not in a function, so this isn't the actual application of it. You can utilize this code, and this will clear all of the alarms. We recently added a function in here so that if you put a value in here, as I just showed, this would now clear all the alarms just for zone 2 or that feeder 2. So you can use that to your advantage and kind of tie those things together and use that. And then the other thing that you can use too is the get unacknowledged alarm counts, if you wanted to also know just how many alarms are present or unacknowledged at the time. So those are some of the things that you can use within Lua and kind of tie them back into AAR. Since we're on a tangent already, let's go a little deeper. Looks like I have Inkscape open already. You can go to Extensions, HMI Library, and Templates. And if you're on one of your created web pages already, or the Inkscape pages, you guys may have noticed down here in the library that there is a button for Acknowledge All Alarms. And this has just a quick little web link in the back of it, but you can use this to your benefit for also acknowledging alarms present within the Orion at the time. So if we jump back, we're going to get out of our tangent and return back to AAR now. But that is how you can utilize the zone. And then after that, we can do the on and off codes. Now, again, in the same mentality with the zone, these are just arbitrary codes. What we might do is, for example, if I search closed, I'm going to have a recloser closed for each one of these feeders. We're going to go ahead and do an edit common attributes. So for recloser closed, one might assume that that's the normal state, and so I might just leave that as a 0. But if I have something happen and that point transitions, maybe I come up with an arbitrary number of 23. The way that this is applied is by returning again to alarms. If I had something trigger, it's going to show that code as associated with that point, whatever it may be. Now, the way that this can be applied is this might be a response type code or a lookup code for some type of an operator or user of the system to say, what's the procedure that I need to follow if this point triggers and causes an alarm? Maybe one's not the best example here, but if let's say a breaker starts having a spring issue or a transformer starts to overheat or it has fan issues, etc., a user might be able to see these codes, look up in some type of external response guide, and then take the appropriate actions told by the system. So that's one way to utilize the codes in here. So jumping through here, we're going to set the on and off codes of 0 and 23 just arbitrarily. On message, if I get a 1 on reclose or closed, that should be spelled correctly, closed. And my off message, assuming to open, I might say tripped. And so I'm going to go ahead and apply those. And now every time that these points change, again, over in my alarms tab, I'm going to see things such as enabled, closed, lockout, on, whatever I type in there for the appropriate on and off values within NCD. One thing that just popped up, I think, is zone numerical only, and yes, it is just numbers there. There's no letters allowed. So going through there, that is the basis here. And then the other thing that you can do is alarming. You can, by default, there's nothing, but you can assign each of these points into different alarming groups. So if I jump over again to settings and then users, they were enabled by default already within the NovaTech account for me here. But you'll notice that there's these 5 permissions here of alarming 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. By having the permission granted to each of the users, that gives them the ability to then go in and acknowledge those alarms. So you can assign some permissions to those. So ways you might use that is possibly, major breakers within the substation, maybe for alarm 1. The next one might be individual feeders, possibly put that to alarm 2, and then maybe have outside the substation type devices, alarm 3, and so on. Use them as you best see fit, or in my example, just leave permissions available to anybody for those points. So that kind of concludes the binary alarm portion, and then we're going to jump into the analog alarms now. And so I'm going to remove that filter text here. Just be careful if you put that in, it is going to carry around. And we are going to find the points that I wanted. We're going to find those currents. So I'm going to search by current here, and we're going to find those. And what you can do now, oops, let's leave it that way. You can create binary type alarms from analog values in the sense that you can create 4 stages of high, 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 low, and low, low. So high, high, and high meaning if values exceed the parameter that you put here in these levels, and low and low lows if they've dropped below said values. So what I'm going to do is for currents, let's, for example, we're going to do a high, high on the A, B, and C, A, B, and C, A, B, and C, and A, B, and C. So obviously this is going to depend on the ampacity of your lines and whatnot, but we're just going to arbitrarily guess. I want to put in some values here. Obviously I can go one by one, or I can use my cheap tool of edit common attributes on here, and I can go ahead and do edit common attributes, and I can put in that high level. And so maybe my lines are only good for up to 600 amps or something, big number. But maybe I want to create alarms that alert me if the feeder is exceeding those currents. So I can put on the high codes again, as we did on the binaries, and then I can also do the high message. So I meant to do this on the last step. I apologize, doing it one more time. We're going to go ahead and do edit common attributes. And now for my high message, I'm going to put over current, and that will apply or show when that value is exceeded. If I clear that, maybe I want to look at the frequency point again. As we showed, we only put the feeder 1 for part of the alarms and whatnot. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come down, we're going to enable the high. We're going to put that on there. And now we're going to put in the frequency. So I'm just going to take a guess, and let's say if it starts to go above that, we want to get the alarm. So we're going to get over frequency. And then for the low, we're going to go ahead and enable that one as well. And I'm going to put these values. The reason I'm typing this in, this is some of the typical numbers that you'll receive from some of your relays or protective devices and whatnot. Typically, you would get a value of 6,000 to represent 60.00. So we're just going to skew that a little bit just to say, is something going above that or something going below 59.9 hertz there. And then our low message is going to be under frequency. And of course, we can put our codes and everything in there. But if I click apply, now I can use just that one point, and we are good to go from there. And that covers frequencies, currents, and then since I'm taking a little bit of extra time, my next example is going to be utilizing the voltages. You can use perhaps a low or a high point if you want even to monitor your voltages or to see if you've got a potential brownout approaching, or and use the analog values to create those binary-based alarms. So Chi, I've been rambling a bit. Any major questions come in?
Yeah, so one question comes in. I was trying to answer it, but maybe you can have a different opinion on it. So a question comes in, is there a way to compare the point list that you have in your inputs of AAR to the rest of the points in the Orion database to determine the AAR's missing points? So yeah, so let's just say if you're trying to configure AAR and you want to make sure you have all the points needed in there, is there an easy way to kind of compare that list with the rest of the list, I guess? And I was thinking by opening up Notepad and kind of manually compare by obtaining that list, but there's no clean way to do it, I don't think.
No, some of the minimal indicators here is, for example, it's searching, it's showing I have 172 items transferred over here. So you could use that. Part of what you have to keep an eye out for is also the polls, responses, and com fails are included in here as well. So if you do select all points like I did, you do need to keep an eye that your polls and your responses are also going to show up in here. So really, I should have sent those over to the left, but not cleanly, I guess. If you're just starting from scratch, of course, you could clear off this whole right side of the list and then just re-add the entire list on the left and then filter away what you don't want, such as these Orion internal points possibly, or as we just showed, the polls and responses. But otherwise, I'd have to think on that one a little bit more.
Yeah, Jeremy suggests that you can extract the point list as a CSV files, and then do and then also do or extract as a text editor and do a comparison using comparison tools too. So those are some options available.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that's it for now for questions.
I mean, we had one suggestion too come through. Thanks, Joe. I mean, there is the generate report, which just kind of reformats the table and shows you in a different way, but it's not necessarily going to do a direct comparison to everything that is available within the database, but you can also use this as a tool as well. So, and this is also, you know, if for records keeping sake, if you did want to include this as some of your sub documentation or whatnot, is obviously you can print this off and show what's being utilized too. So a few tools to your advantage.
A new question came in, Sean. How do you set the midpoint on an analog alarm?
The midpoint. I'm gonna guess that means, okay, the normal state.
Yeah.
Yep. So that is essentially just going to be the interpolation, if you will, between the high level and the low level. So the highs, for example, as we said, it's only going to trigger if the value exceeds whatever you program into the high level. So of course, this is going to depend upon the scaling of each of your end devices. So as long as your normal state is configured between this high enable and this low enable, so basically right here in the column that doesn't exist is where the normal state would reside. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yes, unless there's any other questions, Chi, I think I'm going to throw it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, coming your way.
All right.
Sorry, I went a little over on time.
No way. All right. And you can see my screen all right, Sean?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. All right. So what I have here is actually a very similar configuration as Sean. Well, Sean sent me his configuration. So I have it on my laptop here too. So what he's done so far is he's done the binary alarms and analog alarms. So I won't touch that. But what I want to do is start going into the archive enable and retentive enable. And just to kind of get everyone familiar with the interface, the all points tab here is what kind of enables what gets shown on the archive and retentive tab when you press it. So what I mean by that is that you have to enable the certain points first. And then once you do on this tab here, when you switch to archive, those points then will appear on this tab here. And then if you don't have those points enabled, so like this point here, for example, inst kVA phase feeder 1, that won't appear on this list here. So, so just be aware of that. Same with retentive. So for the all points tab, this is pretty much your main interface to determine which point. And obviously you can have a point that has all four: alarm enable, binary alarm, archive enable, retentive enable. So you can pick and choose. It's kind of a matrix style. You check what boxes apply to what to the point. All right. Sean, can I get you to mute, please?
Oh, yep. Sorry.
No worries. All right. So now on the archive tab. So now that the points are in the archive tab here, you have a few options. So if you look into the archive type, there's 4 different types. We have event timed, and all event. And so all event means anytime the point changes, anytime the point for this point here, it changes, that data change will get stored in the database. So obviously we don't recommend that, because if the point is changing a lot, it's a lot of chatter, for example, it's just going to overload the database, or it's just going to be storing extra information that you really is probably not relevant to you. So what we would recommend is that if, let's say, you can do event, and these are the event ones here. And you can have a deadband set. So these are status points. So usually with our deadband for status point, because it's either 0 or 1, we have a deadband of 0.1. So any change between the binary status, it will store as an event. For analog points, so these are example of analog points. By default, it does a standard of, so depending on if it's a 32-bit, 16-bit, and so on, we have a default of 6,553, for example, or I'm not sure if Sean changed that or not, but obviously you can change that, and this is based on raw count. So if you want to do, let's say, every time it changes by unit of 10, we can change that. So Sean's been using edit common attributes a lot in this demo, and I'm going to be using the same thing. That's the easiest way to change multiple points so that you don't have to go one by one. We can now change this to 10. And so now anytime these analog points change by more than 10 raw unit count, then it gets stored in the database. You also can do time. So for example, maybe the status point here, instead of changing it every time or logging into the database for every time it changes, you can say every 15 minutes. So again, we can do archive time 15 minutes, and we change that to timed, apply, and now these points are now set to time, and every 15 minutes it just gets stored into the database. And obviously you can do to any point, and then now you have the option of event and timed, and so I can go and change those points I just did to, let's say, event timed, and now we're going to do a deadband of 0.1 because it's our status point, and we can leave it at 15, and now these points are now every time either or. So anytime the point changes, it gets saved despite if it's the 15 minutes interval is up or not, and it also does get saved into the database every 15 minutes. So we do have the flexibility of all of these. It really depends on how relevant the information is, how often you want to store it. Just keep in mind, as Sean mentioned, for standard Orions, we have 10 million, up to 10 million records into a database. So what happens is that if your 10 million is full, it starts overwriting older ones. So just, I worked on a project before by accident. A customer had these points, analog points, was being archived, let's say, for every raw count of 1. And so anytime that point changes, it was saved. And they had about maybe 100 points, but they could only, because they were storing for every single change, their archive only contained 1 day of data. And they couldn't see data from yesterday or the day before, the week before, because it was filling up that 10 million so quickly because they didn't have a valid deadband, or they were storing way too fast. So just keep in mind, if you want to be able to view archive data from, let's say, a year ago, then obviously you want to slow down the storing of it by changing the time or the deadband. So just keep that in mind when you're configuring these values. For retention, similar thing, make sure you have a checkbox on the All Points tab here in order for the points to appear in here. And again, you can configure just simply a deadband of when the points get saved and retained in the database. And just kind of backtrack what Sean said, retaining means that anytime the Orion reboots or a config change, I believe, because the value gets stored in the database. Anytime reboots, that value gets put back into that register when the Orion comes up again, and now you have, last real-time value at that point to go into your equations or go to your master and so on, so that you, when you reboot, not everything comes up at 0 because they haven't pulled those points from those devices yet. So simply it's just to allow more of a continuous representation of your data when the Orion reboots in either your logic or to your masters. So configuration for retention, very easy. There's not much to do here. You can do the same thing, kind of highlight what points you want. You can do similar attributes. Now change that to, I don't know, obviously these are status points. You can change it to 0.5 if you want to. That's just an example of changing these points. All right, so those are the points I selected. All right, now next in the AAR module is the Annunciator. So this actually ties back to the alarm. So Sean did the binary alarms and an alarm. So these points are considered to be alarm points now. So when you go to the Annunciator section and you do add new page, now you have the ability to represent these alarm points. So these alarm points that Sean created into a tile display screen. So anyone who's used to who's worked at older substations, there used to be a physical alarm annunciator. So these are panels with physical LEDs with actual input going into them, and anytime those input changes based on its programming, a light will flash. Someone has to acknowledge it. So I can't say in the olden days because I might, because I've seen it myself, is that, you know, these physical alarm panels, they work just like this, but obviously it's hard to change it. So let's say if you want to add more points or change them around or modify them, now you have to physically wire them to an open LED or a spot on the physical panel. So what we've taken that is that same idea of that panel, different, you know, grids and so on. We change that into a software base. So now if you want to add more alarms, it's easier to do that. You don't have to physically wire points anymore. So this will display on, let's say, your monitor in your substation rather than a physical hardwire panel. So in our tile annunciator module, we can add multiple pages. So right now, page 1, so I'm just going to call this feeder 1, for example. So you can divvy up your alarm points any way you want. Obviously, do it so that it's easy for you to find alarm points, easy to understand, more intuitive to the end user who's acknowledging the alarms. So for this example, because Sean had, you know, points from feeder 1, feeder 2, feeder 3, we're going to divvy those points into feeder 1, feeder 2, feeder 3. So for our alarm annunciator, we can have up to 24 pages. So that's the maximum it can go. And then each page can have up to 10 rows and 6 columns. So what that means is that 60 tiles per page, so maximum you can have 1,440 alarm in a tile annunciator. So that's the max. I don't think we've ever reached that high in any projects, but just so that you're aware, that's the maximum capability. All right, so designing our tile annunciator. So because we're doing feeder 1 page, I'm just going to filter this out to feeder 1 on this list. So as you can see, Sean's alarm point list now filtered to just to be feeder 1 points. And if I were to put all these points into a tile, I think I counted it, it's about 21 points. So let's just do maybe 6 rows, 4 columns. Again, you can change it any way you want. You can do 4 rows, 6 columns. And then what you can do is now you can select these points and bring it in. And now what it does, it autofills. And so my screen's a bit small, but you can't, let's see if I can get a little bit bigger here. So what it does is that now you can move these tiles around if you want to. So as I move that alarm from row 4 to column 4 to row 6, column 4, you can see that it got changed in here. So when you hover through these, you can see where these points are here as well. So it kind of helps you organize your alarm points. Just so, and again, organize your points based on how, you know, how the points are, the grouping, just easy for user to find points. Again, what you need to know that there's a point name column. So these are your point tags that's in the NCD configuration. But then also there's a tile name. So what's shown on the tile doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing as your point tag. So maybe you don't want to show that it's at feeder 1 here. So you can remove that, just leave it fail, or you can maybe make it more a professional naming, or we can remove recloser feeder 1 there, and so on. So you can modify it, especially if these points are coming in from, let's say, a IO module. So maybe sometimes your point tags are binary 1, binary 2, binary 3. You can have those tag names there, but then what does binary 1 mean? It could be door alarm. Binary 2 could be your break will open. So keep in mind there is a ability to change what the tiles display versus your tag name within the configuration.
And
All
one
right.
quick note there too, we didn't do this in this example. We didn't configure any of the alias names, but if you go through the alias add-on and configure those secondary names for the point names, within that shown tile name column, the alias values will actually display.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. So it's one way to, one thing that becomes important there is kind of your order of operation. So if you create all of your points as if you were doing any of the client's ports and whatnot, add alias within there. Then when you come in to do AAR and the tile annunciator, you can hopefully skip the step of configuring all of the tile names because the alias values will be there already.
And you have the option here switching between alias and point names here too on this screen here, depending on what you're more comfortable working with. Point name.
Yeah, sorry. Just remembered that portion.
No worries. Thank you. Yeah, so that's the annunciator. What I'm going to do is going to add another page. Let's just do feeder 2. Accept. Same thing here. So maybe let's do 4 and 6 just to change it up. And then bring it all in. And so this one's slightly different, more columns and rows. And then I'll just drag things around and so on. So really that's the extent of the configuring the annunciator. You create your pages, you drag, and you select your points, and then you drag where you want them to be. So what I'm just going to do is save this, and I'll show you how to display it on your Orion. So right now I saved my demo file. I'm just going to send that into my Orion here. And then I'll make it active. And Sean mentioned about alarm banners. So here you have the ability to show how many alarms are unacknowledged and how many total alarms. So some of them are acknowledged at this point. So I'll show you in a little bit where you configure that banner. I just want to show right now since it's popping up, since it's popped up right now. And but I will go back to that soon. So to view the Annunciator page, I guess the simple way of going to it is the IP address of your Orion, and then typing in Annunciator. And I'll show you. So this is the tile Annunciator that we just created. So this is my feeder 1. This is my feeder 2. So right now we just have 1 alarm for COM fail and so on. So it's blinking. You can acknowledge it, and then it'll stay solid. And this on is that code that Sean was talking about. If we go kind of reiterate back, this is your, this is your your on message and off message. So right now for my configuration is just on and off. So you'll see that whatever you configure on there will also be shown when you select that alarm, and it'll show you what the status of that message is. So another way, so instead of manually typing in Annunciator every time you want to access it, what you can also do is do the alarm quick link here. So this is what I have here. It's the same thing. It takes you to the same page. So so for anyone that is unfamiliar with the link there, you have the options of configuring that under settings, web UI, and then simply if you go to your link bar, you'll see that you can type in /. So here you don't actually have to type in the IP address of the Orion. The Orion just know that it's referring to itself as long as you have that /, and then just have Annunciator and then your alarm. Obviously you can do the same thing with your one lines and so on, but that's for another day. You can view that, and then there's also another option of and just so that you're aware, you can do that. You can create links from, let's say, your one-line diagram. You can click Annunciator, takes you to the same page. So there's a few options. If you want to view Annunciator, easiest one is just to type in the browser bar. All right, so what I'm going to do is go to Settings, and we're going to talk about that banner that I just mentioned. So if you go to Settings, under Web Page, there is Alarms. And in this alarm, you'll see that you can show warning banner. So that's the one, that pink banner that keeps popping up. So you can disable it if you want. And then you can show, either have a summary of any alarms, or you can do the most recent. So if the most recent is critical to you, you can select that checkbox. And then you can do audio alarms as well. So if you want, let's see if it plays it. I'm not sure if I'm having mine muted yet on my laptop. Oh, it's because I have my headphones in. Never mind. That won't work. You guys won't hear it. So in the event that you want audio alarms from the Orion, so let's say there is depending on the Orion you have, there is a phone, kind of a phone jack on it. You can connect a speaker to it. And if you have an alarm, you can have it blaring up to 5 different sounds, and you can configure how often it makes that sound. So this is so that when an engineer, technician goes into a substation, they're aware that there is an alarm just based on the audio. All right, so the next thing is the color. So this is purely it's not for the tile. I want to reiterate that. I think we are going to do it. We don't have the ability yet for the tiles, but this is for the alarms tab, and Sean showed that in a little bit. And so by default, your normal state's green, your high or alarm state is red, your or high and lows are red whenever it is in abnormal state, and when it is acknowledged as dark orange. So you can, if you want, you can change those colors, and these are the colors. You can type in hexadecimal representation of the color, or you can just type in these colors right here via text. I don't want to mess with that because I like that, but I just want to show an example. Let's say in let's do an alarm state. Let's say I want to show my background blue, just to show you an example of what it looks like. You save changes. Now if I go to my alarms, you can see now my alarm state, which this is acknowledged, but this is my alarm state. Now my background is blue. It's not the prettiest thing, but just to kind of show you that you can change the background and the text color for this alarm page here. All right, we're going over a little bit. My apologies, but just a few more things to show, and Power Hour will be done. So for this display here, it will only display alarms that are an alarm or it's still an alarm but has been acknowledged. But you can kind of play around with the sorting if you want. So anytime you click on the columns, it can sort based on that. So it's just kind of a user interface. You can search for alarms. So let's say if I just want to see COM fail, then you can use this search bar here. You can configure what columns display. So as Sean mentioned, zoning. If you do have zoning configured, you can select zone and code, apply preference, and now your zone and your code can display in this interface here. So it's very user-friendly interface. You can kind of select, pick and choose what you want to see. So this page here shows what the current alarms are. We can do alarm archive, and you can go and see the history of your alarms, when it was acknowledged, unacknowledged, and so on, by whom. You can show all that here. And with mine, there's not, well, with my Orion, we just, because we just enabled that configuration, it has, the archive is pretty small. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go to archive tab here, but I'm going to switch my file that have longer archive data just so that we can show the trending. Just this demo file is quite new, so it won't have any data, but I'll switch to this one here. All right, so go to our archive tab now. So just kind to a review, alarms and archive tab won't appear unless you enable the Postgres database, as Sean shown at the beginning. So similar here, this is your archive database. So anytime a point in your archive changes, say every 15 minutes, if you configure it to be timed, or every time it passes that dead band, it gets archived. So you can, from this interface here, you can filter down to certain points if you want. So let's say if I want to do just feeder 1 voltage, amps, add it. And I got to, it says, so this is, it does show you a reminder that if you're trying to query something with too many entries, it will remind you that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to the last past day. And there you go. So now it kind of narrowed down that querying a little bit. So now you can see the archive for feeder 1 phase A voltage in the last day. So it does allow you to do that. You can go through that data. Again, you can you can configure the columns similar to what we did on the alarms tab. If you don't want to see ID, you can apply a preference. Now that column's gone. Again, sorting date, time. You can do that all by clicking on the column names here. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is trending. So by clicking on view trending, now you have the ability to graph any of the points that you configure for archiving. So archiving is your mini data historian. It's not a full-blown data historian because it doesn't store years and years and years of data, but it's short-term data historian. So if I just want to see, let's say from midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning yesterday. Actually, let's do today. I don't think I had it on yesterday. For 1 o'clock, set, push it back to 27, set, and then do feeder phase amps, and you can do multiple points as well. So let's do B amps and then C amps, and then you can update view, and then now it does a graphing trending for you. What you can do as well is you can drag in the trending and you can zoom down if you want. And analyze maybe something happened during, between 12:26 last night. You can go and look at the data of those entries, those points, and do your analysis there. We are doing some enhancements to this. I think I'll leave it to Ray later on, another Power Hour to kind of get everyone excited for the new enhancement, but we are updating this so that you have more flexibility. Other than that, Sean, any questions come in, or do you want to add anything before we end this Power Hour?
No, I think we're set. I've been asking them as we go along, or answering as we go along.
Perfect. All right. So that being said, that concludes our Power Hour. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach us out to us. as anyone who's new to Power Hour, all our videos are posted on our Power Support community. If you don't have a login yet, request a login from Jeremy or your RSMs, and we'll get you a login for it. And once you're in the Power Support community, you can just type in, let's say, AAR, Power Hour. This Power Hour will probably be shown as a result, and you can watch the whole video again, but you can look at our previous Power Hours. You can look at any of our documentations. You can download our software firmware as well. So it's a good source for anything Orion or Biotronics. I believe this is still going. If you're still interested in evaluating an Orion MX, please reach out to your SM. I think we're still giving away these for evaluation. And that being said, again, if you have any questions, either specifically for AAR, you can request Sean or myself in our new booking. I guess it's not new anymore. Our sales engineer booking site. You'll see our availability time there. You can select a time. Or if you want to talk about anything else, you can request other sales engineer as well. All right, both Sean and myself, thank you all for attending this Power Hour. And I believe we have an expert Power Hour in 2 weeks from now. And we'll see all of you there. Thank you so much.